All right, so let's dive into this one you sent over, this Karma Yoga by Swami Vivekananda.
Yeah,
Really fascinating stuff, and looks like you're kind of interested in Eastern philosophy and like how to put it into practice in your daily life.
right.
So
Exactly.
this book from the late 1800s, it's all about how we approach work,
Hmm.
and it's pretty surprising how timely it feels even today.
It is fascinating how these concepts, they're so rooted in ancient wisdom, but they still resonate with us so much
Yeah,
today.
absolutely.
Yeah.
So, um, I guess let's just start with karma itself.
Uh-huh.
Everyone kind of throws that word around, but
Uh-huh.
what are we really talking about here?
Well, the book really breaks it down to, this idea of action and its effects.
Okay.
And it emphasizes that every action, every thought, every experience, no matter how small, shapes who we are, shapes our character.
Hmm.
It's like, you're building a mosaic. Every little piece contributes to that larger picture.
Also, even those like little everyday choices we make, you're saying that those are kind of contributing to some bigger long-term impact.
Exactly. And karma yoga is particularly interesting because it focuses on work as this path to uncovering the knowledge that's already within us.
I see. So it's not just about working hard, it's about working with intention and awareness.
Yes. And this ties into this really key idea in Eastern philosophy, which is that the true goal of life isn't about chasing pleasure, it's about gaining knowledge.
Hmm.
The book even goes so far as to suggest that we often learn more from those difficult experiences than from the happy ones.
Oh, that's kind of a thought-provoking idea, right?
Ah,
It challenges the whole like pursuit of happiness thing.
it does. It makes you wonder if constantly seeking comfort and avoiding pain, are we actually limiting our own growth?
Yeah.
The book actually uses examples of, figures in history who achieved greatness through overcoming immense challenges.
You're right.
Imagine if they just chose the easy path, would they have left such a lasting impact?
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like, those situations that force you to kind of dig deep and discover strengths that maybe you didn't even know you had before.
Mhm.
So how does this all connect back to karma yoga and work?
Well, the book argues that everything we see around us, from technology to art, it's all a manifestation of human will.
Hmm.
And will is a product of character, which is shaped by our karma.
Oh.
It's this intricate chain reaction.
So in a way, we're constantly shaping our future selves through
Mhm.
the actions that we take today.
Mhm.
And that brings us to, I guess, this idea of developing a powerful will through persistent work.
Right. And the book uses these really compelling examples of Buddha and Jesus, who both came from seemingly ordinary backgrounds,
Right.
yet went on to make this extraordinary impact.
Right. And I'm curious, like, how does the book address the whole concept of willpower? Is it something we're born with, or is it something we can actually cultivate?
The book seems to suggest that a strong will is developed over time through consistent effort,
Yep.
shaped by our karma. It's not necessarily about having some innate superpower.
Hmm.
It's about cultivating that discipline and perseverance.
So it's more about showing up and doing the work consistently, even when it's hard.
That's the core idea, and now we come to a central, perhaps even paradoxical principle of karma yoga, working diligently but remaining unattached to the results.
Okay, that does sound a little tricky.
Yeah.
How do you put your heart into your work without caring about the outcome?
Yeah, it's a subtle balance.
Yeah.
The book uses this analogy of a lake to explain non-attachment.
Okay.
Imagine each ripple and wave leaving behind impressions or samskaras. These are like the imprints our actions leave on our minds.
Okay, so I can kind of picture that, right? Each action leaving a trace, like ripples spreading out. But what do these samskaras have to do with attachment?
So the book explains that clinging to these traces, being overly attached to the result of our actions, creates a kind of bondage,
Hmm.
keeps us stuck in these cycles of craving and aversion. But when we learn to let go of that attachment, we experience a sense of freedom.
So it sounds like a mental shift, right? Moving from a place of like, I need this to happen, to like, I'm going to give this my best regardless of the outcome.
Precisely, it's about finding that inner peace and equanimity that allows us to act without being driven by fear or desire.
So how do we even begin to cultivate that non-attachment, right? Because especially in a world where we're constantly striving for results, it feels almost counterintuitive.
The book acknowledges that it can be challenging. It compares the struggle of moving between intense activity and calm renunciation to a deep-sea fish suddenly brought to the surface.
Oh, wow. Without that pressure, it can't survive.
Right.
I see the parallel there. So it's like someone accustomed to solitude being suddenly thrown into this hectic world.
And conversely, someone used to a really fast-paced life might find it difficult to adjust to stillness and quiet contemplation.
So finding that balance, right? Engaging fully in the world, but also cultivating that inner peace and detachment.
Exactly. The book presents this ideal of finding intense activity amidst silence and the solitude of the desert, even within a whirlwind of activity.
So it's like mastering that inner stillness no matter what's happening around you.
Hmm.
That sounds incredibly challenging, but also incredibly liberating.
It is, and the book emphasizes that even working without selfish motives for a short time can be transformative.
Uh,
It suggests that unselfishness leads to greater power, improved health, and a more profound expression of love, truth, and power.
so instead of thinking, what's in it for me, it's about shifting to how can I contribute? How can I serve?
It is, and to illustrate this idea, the book uses this powerful analogy of a coachman controlling a carriage.
Okay.
It's through restraint, through channeling our energy wisely, that we achieve true strength.
So true power comes from mastering oneself, not from controlling those external circumstances.
And here's where the book throws in a thought-provoking twist. It argues that both extremes, complete resistance and complete non-resistance, can actually lead to similar negative outcomes.
Oh, that's a bit of a head scratcher. What does that even mean in practice?
Well, the book illustrates this point with the example of a beggar having nothing to renounce.
Hmm.
True renunciation isn't about having nothing to give, but about consciously choosing to act without attachment.
So it's not the circumstance, it's the choice.
Exactly.
I can see how clinging to either extreme can be limiting.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding that middle path of action without attachment.
Exactly. And the book goes on to introduce this fascinating concept from Hinduism, the 4 stages of life, each with its own unique set of duties.
Okay, we've covered a lot of ground already, but I'm definitely ready to hear more.
Let's delve into those stages of life and see what wisdom they hold.
Okay, you mentioned these 4 stages of life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really curious to hear more about that.
Yeah, this is a fascinating concept in Hinduism. These 4 stages, called ashramas, are brahmacharya, student; grihastha, householder; vanaprastha, forest dweller; and sannyasa, renunciate.
Okay.
Each stage has its own set of duties and responsibilities, guiding individuals through different phases of life.
So it's like a roadmap for spiritual growth and fulfillment throughout a lifetime.
Precisely. And the book focuses specifically on the grihastha stage, which is the time when most people are, building families and careers.
Mm-hmm.
And it acknowledges the unique challenges of this stage, emphasizing the importance of performing duties without getting attached to the outcomes.
So it's not about abandoning worldly responsibilities, but about approaching them with a different mindset.
Exactly. The book provides some really specific examples of a householder's duties, drawing from this ancient text called the Mahanirvana Tantra.
Okay.
For instance, it talks about the importance of always pleasing one's parents, considering them as representatives of God on earth.
Oh, wow, that's interesting. It
Right.
really emphasizes the significance of family and honoring one's elders within this stage of life.
It does. The text even goes into detail about, showing respect through actions like bowing low and never speaking harshly to parents.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really thought-provoking.
Okay.
The text also endorses resisting enemies, which seems to contrast with typical interpretations of non-resistance in Eastern philosophies.
So it's like saying turn the other cheek has its limits. Yeah. Nonviolence isn't always the answer.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how does the book reconcile those seemingly opposing ideas?
Well, the book challenges us to consider the nuances of duty. It points out that duty is not this fixed universal concept,
Right.
but something that's influenced by individual beliefs, cultural norms, and circumstances.
Yeah, I could see how that would create a lot of gray areas.
Right.
What's considered morally right in one culture could be completely unacceptable in another.
Exactly. The book uses the example of a Christian's perspective on eating beef versus a Hindu's.
Boy.
What's considered a moral obligation for one is a complete taboo for the other,
Right.
highlighting the subjective nature of duty.
So how do we navigate that, right? If duty is so subjective, is there any kind of guiding principle?
Amidst all this complexity, the book emphasizes one universal duty: not injuring any being.
Okay.
It suggests that causing harm is fundamentally against the principles of karma yoga, regardless of your specific beliefs or cultural background.
Okay, that makes sense at its core. It's about promoting compassion and minimizing harm. Seems like a solid foundation for ethical action.
It is, and this leads to another important point. We should try to see the duty of others through their own eyes, not judge them based on our own limited perspective.
Right.
It's a call for empathy and understanding, recognizing that different people may have different moral compasses.
That's such an important reminder in today's world, especially with so much division and misunderstanding between different cultures and belief systems.
It is to illustrate this concept of duty. The book shares a story about a king who wants to understand who's greater, the one who renounces the world, or the one who lives in it, performing their duties as a householder.
Sounds like this king is grappling with some pretty deep questions about the right way to live what happens in the story.
So after encountering various sages who can't give him a satisfactory answer, he meets this young sannyasin who essentially says that both paths are equally valid.
Hmm.
It's about fulfilling the duties of your chosen path with dedication.
So it's not about which path is objectively better, but about living in alignment with your chosen path.
To prove his point, the sannyasin takes the king on a journey. They witness a princess who falls in love with a handsome sannyasin, offering him marriage and half her kingdom, but he rejects her, saying those things hold no meaning for him.
Wow, talk about non-attachment. But what happens to the princess?
The princess, heartbroken but determined, follows the sannyasin into a forest. The king and the other sannyasin follow them, but the young sannyasin mysteriously disappears.
Oh, so now they're all lost in the woods. What happens next?
The princess, overcome with grief, sits weeping under a tree. A nearby family of birds witnesses her distress. The father bird, understanding his duty as a householder to provide for guests, makes a profound decision.
Okay, I'm on the edge of my seat here. What does he do?
He jumps into their fire, offering his own body as sustenance for the princess.
Oh, wow, that's incredibly selfless. But what about the rest of the bird family?
The mother bird, seeing that one bird is not enough for the princess and her two companions, follows her mate's example and also sacrifices herself. And then the three baby birds, driven by that same deep sense of duty, also jump into the fire.
That's such a powerful and poignant story. I can see how it illustrates the concept of duty and self-sacrifice, even in the face of incredible difficulty.
It's a powerful reminder that true greatness isn't about status or possessions, but about performing one's duties, whatever they may be, with complete selflessness and dedication.
So whether you choose a life of renunciation or a life as a householder, it's about living your chosen path with integrity and a spirit of service.
Exactly. And from this concept of duty, the book transitions to another fascinating idea, work as worship. It introduces this concept of offering the fruits of our labor to a higher power.
So it's like seeing every action as an act of devotion, bringing a sense of reverence to our everyday work. How does that connect to the concept of non-attachment?
Well, the book suggests that by approaching our work with this attitude, we naturally cultivate non-attachment to the results.
Hmm.
It's about doing our best without being overly concerned with the outcome. The book uses the image of a lotus leaf which remains untouched by water even while fully immersed in it.
I love that analogy. It's about finding that inner peace and equanimity even amidst challenging work.
The book continues to be exploring the idea that while we might think we're helping the world through our work,
Yeah.
we're primarily helping ourselves through this moral exercise.
It's not so much about fixing the world as it is about using action as a way to grow and evolve.
Precisely, the book uses this striking analogy, mice running on wheels in a cage.
Okay.
They're expending effort, but ultimately going nowhere.
Right.
The book suggests it's the same with us trying to fix the world.
So the world doesn't actually need our help. That seems like a radical idea.
It's about recognizing that the real work lies within us. Trying to change the world without first addressing our own inner state can lead to frustration and disappointment.
That makes a lot of sense. It's about starting with ourselves, with cultivating those qualities of compassion, non-attachment, and selfless service, and then letting those qualities naturally flow outward into the world.
Exactly. And then the book shares this story about a man who wishes for a ghost to do all his work. He gets his wish, but the ghost completes every task instantly and then demands more work, threatening to eat the man if he can't keep up.
Oh no, that backfired quickly. What happens?
The man runs back to the sage who granted him the wish and begs for help. The sage instructs him to cut off a dog's curly tail and tell the ghost to straighten it.
Wait, that's the solution?
It is. The ghost struggles to straighten the tail, but every time he lets go, it curls right back up. Finally, he gives up and strikes a deal with the man. He'll leave him alone in exchange for freedom. The story highlights the pitfalls of seeking external help and becoming overly attached to the results of our actions.
So it's like trying to force things to go a certain way instead of trusting the natural flow of life.
Exactly, and the book concludes this section with a caution against fanaticism in our approach to work. It emphasizes the importance of staying calm and level-headed, cultivating compassion and understanding rather than getting caught up in rigid ideologies or beliefs.
So it's not about becoming a workaholic or pushing ourselves to the point of burnout, but about finding that balance between action and non-attachment, working with a clear mind and an open heart. This has been a really insightful conversation, and I'm excited to see where we go next.
We've explored so much about karma yoga already, understanding karma itself, the importance of selfless work and non-attachment. Where does this deep dive take us next?
The book goes even deeper, introducing this idea of complete self-abnegation as the highest ideal of karma yoga.
Okay.
It's a state where the ego dissolves and there's no I, but all is thou.
Whoa, that sounds like a completely different level of existence. How does that even work in, like, the real world?
It's about transcending the limitations of the ego and acting purely out of love and compassion. The book explains that at this level, all paths, jnana, bhakti, and karma converge.
Okay, hold on. Could you unpack those terms for me? I'm not sure I'm following.
Of course. So in Hinduism, jnana is the path of knowledge, bhakti is the path of devotion, and karma is the path of action. The book suggests that in complete self-abnegation, these paths become one.
It's a state of complete union with the divine.
So it's not about achieving some personal goal. It's about connecting with something larger than ourselves.
Exactly. And the book provides a really compelling example of this state with the sage Vyasa and his son Shuka.
Okay.
Shuka was born enlightened, completely unfazed by external circumstances.
Yeah, I remember that story. He was like totally calm and composed, even when he was ignored by the palace guards for days and then suddenly treated like royalty.
Right.
It's like nothing could shake his inner peace.
And then there's that test that the king gave him, carrying a cup of milk through a hall filled with distractions without spilling a drop.
Right.
Shuka passed effortlessly, demonstrating true non-attachment.
It's like he had this incredible focus and inner strength that allowed him to like stay present and unmoved by all the chaos around him. And the book seems to be suggesting that we all have that potential within us.
That's right. The book highlights that nothing has power over us unless we allow it. It challenges us to become masters of our own minds, recognizing that our perception shapes our reality.
That's a powerful concept. So you're saying if we can master our minds, we can actually perceive the world as a more harmonious and blissful place.
The book puts forward that very idea. It challenges us to question our notions of a perfect world or even a continuation of our current limited existence. It's about embracing the impermanence of all things.
So instead of getting caught up in trying to control everything or clinging to the way things are, it's about cultivating a different way of seeing and being in the world.
Precisely, the book uses the analogy of a whirlpool to illustrate this.
Okay.
We get caught in the world's currents, experiencing ups and downs, but eventually we can regain our freedom and find stillness at the center.
So even amidst challenges and setbacks, there's always the possibility of finding peace and liberation. It's inspiring, but also a little daunting. How do we actually apply these profound ideas to our everyday lives?
Well, the book points to Buddha as the embodiment of karma yoga. He dedicated his life to selfless service, working tirelessly without any expectation of personal reward.
That's a high bar to set. How can we as ordinary people possibly live up to that example?
The book encourages us to simply focus on doing good for its own sake, just as Buddha did. It's about finding that inner motivation to act with kindness and compassion, regardless of external recognition or reward.
So it's not about becoming some kind of superhero or saint, but about bringing that spirit of selfless service to our everyday interactions and actions. It sounds like a lifelong practice of cultivating awareness and intention.
It is, and remember, karma yoga emphasizes that this journey is ultimately about liberating ourselves from those self-centered desires and attachments that cause so much suffering.
So what does this all mean for you, our listener? Karma yoga is inviting us to shift our perspective. We're not here to fix the world, but to use our actions as a way to liberate ourselves from the limitations of our own ego.
It's a journey of self-discovery through selfless work.
It's about recognizing that every action, every thought, has the power to shape not only our own lives, but also the world around us.
It's about recognizing that even amidst the chaos and uncertainty, there's always a path towards inner peace and fulfillment.
As we wrap up this deep dive into karma yoga, what resonates with you the most? Maybe this week you could choose one task and approach it with complete non-attachment just to see what happens.
And if you're intrigued by those stories of self-sacrifice and devotion, perhaps explore other examples of selfless giving in different cultures who are the unsung heroes in your own community. There's always more to discover.